So today, while we paint, I'm going to talk about my genealogy and why I'm not a big fan of Thanksgiving. So these are all the boards I have to paint. There are 64 purple boards, and I'm not going to paint the ones that aren't painted yet, but this is all what I've got to do. These lavender boards are from my butterfly garden, and we are painting them black. Well, I guess it's called slate. Just because we don't think that our neighbors would appreciate lavender colored boards. And so we're painting them just kind of a basic darker color in hopes that it will hide in the background. Not to mention, these boards needed to be repainted anyway because they are so dirty. But while I'm painting, let's get into why I don't like Thanksgiving. So this year I have decided not to celebrate Thanksgiving anymore. And part of that is in line with a tiny bit of my genealogy. But the other part is, even as a white person, I don't feel the need to celebrate Thanksgiving. What we did to the indigenous peoples, the first peoples of this nation, is terrible. And it was sugar-coated as a child, where all we learned about was the peace and the sharing of the food, which in some part that did happen, but for the most part, European settlers basically annihilated many tribal nations, including one of the ones that I am a direct descendant from, the Potawatomi tribe, which is now, the English have made that more simpler in pronunciation. It's the Potomac, named after the Potomac River. I have it goes way back. I can't say that I am Native American, but it's in my heart and I feel it here in my soul and my spirit. I've always felt connected with Native Americans, and we always knew that there was Native American descendants on my dad's side from his mother. We never really knew how until actually about a month ago, my aunt and I discovered how. I gave her the name. She was able to find a picture of him through her mom's letters and notes, and she was able to go into records through the Mormon church. They keep very good records. We are not Mormon, but they keep very good records, and you don't have to be a Mormon to go and look up your family history. So she was able to confirm and verify that this man was one of our great-grandfathers. And so I thought that was pretty neat. However, what the European settlers did to the Potomac tribe is terrible. They basically one night killed almost all of them in the village simply because the tribe did not want to accept the European settlers' governor as their ruler. The Potomac tribe, wanted their own chief to be their ruler, and the Europeans didn't like that, and so they came back later in the night and wiped out their village, including women and children. And there was about roughly 90 women and some children who were taken to Barbados and sold as slaves. And there were a handful of men that survived because, get this, they were away from their village helping other European settlers do their crops. If that's not stab in the back, I don't know what is. But this has happened several times to several tribes. And I am not one who enjoys being lied to. As a matter of fact, it's my biggest pet peeve. I can go through anything as long as I know the truth, as long as you're honest. But lying, I hate it. And so growing up being lied to about the indigenous peoples and the pilgrims and the settlers, and being taught that everything was hunky-dory and they got along, and that's why we celebrate Thanksgiving, when in fact that is not the truth. Now, before any of you tell me that they sugarcoat it because little kids can't handle the truth, I beg to differ, considering these little 5 and 6-year-olds have to go through active shooter drills at school every so often, so they know what to do when a shooter comes in through their school. And if they can handle that, they can handle the truth of what happened to the indigenous tribes of America. No, Thanksgiving holiday wasn't even an actual national holiday until 1863, when President Lincoln was trying to promote unity. Not only unity because of the Civil War, but the War of 1862 with the Dakota tribe. President Lincoln had just assassinated 38 Dakota tribesmen before he declared this national holiday. Seems a little suspect to me. The tensions were high on all parts, not just because of the Civil War. So he was trying to create something that would tie in peace together with everyone. Now, the original Thanksgiving does date back to like 1621 with pilgrims and indigenous peoples to celebrate their harvest together. But the peace did not last, obviously. And what we have done to the indigenous peoples as white European settlers is not something to celebrate. Yes, we can be thankful for what we've got that day, but we can be thankful any day of the year. We don't need to national holiday to celebrate being thankful. I would prefer to call this Thanksgiving holiday a day of mourning, a national day of mourning, which is what the indigenous peoples call this day, and I don't blame them. And I will be calling it that from now on, in solidarity with them. I am one who believes that reparations are necessary to promote peace, and that's just one small thing I can do. It's not my fault for the white settlers of the past, what they have done. Who knows what I would have done back then? But this is one thing that I can do now as a white-skinned person with mostly European DNA, considering I am mostly Scotch-Irish, a little bit of French-Dutch, and definitely German. But I do have that tiny smidge of DNA. And not many of you know this, but I was engaged to a Native American man for a while. He had his tribal membership, and I was able to meet and spend a lot of time with the indigenous peoples and dance at powwows. And I have regalia. I have my ribbon dress. I never competed. I just danced in the general where everyone dances. But I can tell you that when I walked on that dance floor, I'm about to get emotional here, I felt something. I felt like me dancing on that floor, a part of my heritage, was finally able to be recognized, and that they were finally able to dance without being worried what was going to happen to them, that I got to dance for them. And I can't explain that. It's just the feeling I got when I danced on that floor. And I obviously ended up not marrying that man for other reasons, which I won't get into. But I appreciate that time and that I got to experience that culture and that little bit of DNA that's in me and will always remain part of me. Now, how I have an ancestor and a descendant from the Potomac tribe is, it is my 5th great-grandfather. So technically, DNA-wise, I probably only share, on average, 0.78%, so less than 1% with him. but that tiny bit is in there. And technically, I might also have a little bit of Choctaw as well, but the Choctaw piece ancestry has not been verified yet. My 5th great-grandfather, who was from the Potomac tribe, has been verified. His name was Bradley Richardson. Now, if you're wondering why there are so many light-skinned indigenous members, it is because, remember, a lot of their tribes were wiped out, almost nearly to 0 people, and so they had to integrate and marry European settlers. Why am I sharing all of this genealogy with you when I could just say why I don't like Thanksgiving? The reason why I'm sharing this genealogy is because I want people to know that I am proud of this part of my heritage. And for several years, my ancestors, including my grandmother and her mother, were ashamed and not proud to be Native American, from the indigenous peoples from that tribe. And that saddens my heart. And it was because they were so hated back then. They were afraid to admit that they were part of the indigenous people. And that makes me sad. And we are now in a place that I am not afraid to admit that I have that part of heritage in me, and I want it to be known to my future family members, that my nieces and nephews will have someday. They can go back and look at this recording on records and know that little bit of heritage from their DNA. If you want a good book to learn more about the Potomac tribe and what happened, there's a great historical fiction written by Laura Chilton. The book title is 1666. Make sure you get that book. That's by Laura Chilton. There's another book that's called 1666. But this is about what happened to the Potomac tribe the night they were wiped out. And Laura Chilton did a lot of research for this. She went as far as to go to Barbados to look at the colonial records. She interviewed a lot of Potomac tribes people for her information based on oral tradition. So even though it is a historical fiction, it is fiction based on history. It's a great book for getting more insight and learning on what happened to this tribe. And you can get it on Amazon. Now that all of the boards are done, or at least the lavender boards are painted and done, I'm going to call it a day. If you've watched this far, thank you so much. And until next time, feed the pollinators for me.